What up, everyone tuning back in? Welcome to Just a Minute. This is your source for everything Grassroots Basketball, brought to you by the good people here at HoopSeen.com. I am Austin Smith, your HoopSeen host, and my brother, my partner in crime, who always joins me each and every episode, is our editor-in-chief here at HoopSeen.com. He is Justin Young. JY, man, what does it do? I guess you could say that, brother. What's good?
Everything's good, man. Everything's really good. Excited to get on today's show. So much to talk about. Huge weekend. It seems like every weekend builds upon the weekend before. And, man, there's so much to talk about today on the show.
Yeah, going through the show notes, man, there's a lot to talk about. Commitments, preview camp information. So I guess we'll go ahead and get right to it. Alabama preview was this past weekend, and special shout out to our guy, Cortland Christian, for doing an excellent job, man, of putting that together. Fantastic. And from what I've heard, the camp was amazing, and we've got a lot to talk about it. So let's get right to it. Alabama preview is one of our preview camps from this year, and it did what it was supposed to do. Guys came through, they were able to get coverage, and we had some players that stood up above the rest, a few guys that we took note of. And let's go through that list, JY. Starting first, we've got Alex Odum. Talk to us a little bit about Adam, man, and what we saw from him this past weekend.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to set the stage too. Like, this was the biggest camp that we've ever had in the state of Alabama. Wow. And so we've had more players at this camp than we've ever had before. And so the talent level was also was really, really good. It was really deep. We had a really good group of guys. Talking to Cortland Christian, talking to Josh Tech, talking to Garrett Tucker, one of our original guys on the staff from Alabama was there. Daryl LeBerry, our camp director. Everyone had great things to say about it. And so coming up with our top five was actually a bit of a challenge because we had so much talent that was there. And I think across the board, these were the five players that made everybody stand out. And you mentioned Alex Odum, a class of 23 guard, very, very quick, really nice pull-up jump shot. I think the thing with him that I heard from Cortland, you'll see this on the site this week as we go through our top overall performers, that step back three-point shot, that was a weapon. And that weapon was used all the time at the camp. And Alex Odum did a really good job of creating some separation for himself to get some open looks. So Alex Odum, definitely one of the top five guys from our staff coverage of coaches and evaluators there from Alabama camp for sure made the cut.
Oh, moving on down the list. Another familiar name that I got a chance to see in person, and we saw a lot during the HSA this year, MJ Jones of Hawks Elite was apparently back to his continued scoring ways and doing everything he did best. Talk to us a little bit about MJ.
Well, I think when we're at now in the recruiting cycle where players are starting to commit, some schools are now having to reposition their their recruiting board after guys make decisions. Okay. And so now positions are becoming open, or now you have a scholarship that you didn't have before because you had it committed to another player. Yeah. That player makes another decision or decision for another school. There we go. That opens some things up. I think MJ Jones is a guy that now needs to move in that category, that we need to revisit this guy. We need to pull up the film from the spring and the summer. We need to see who MJ Jones is. We know who he is. Yeah. He's a great scorer. He's dynamic. He's fun to watch. He gets up and down the floor. Really good athlete, good size. We saw that again at the Alabama preview camp. It's no secret to us because we've been witnessing it for, since the springtime on the HSA platform. And MJ came into camp, did it all over again. And if there's anything that's important as a prospect, we talk about this all the time. You got to be consistent. And MJ Jones continues to be productive at his position in the platforms that we create, and he comes and shines on.
And I'll add to that too. You talk about being consistent. Jay, I'll take it a step further. I'll even talk about being consistent on high-level stages. Like, you perform well in the HSA, you bring that again to the Alabama preview camp. MJ is a player who was able to kind of get a brand behind his name, develop some traction behind his name by performing well, and that carried along with him to the preview camp. And now he builds his stock even more at a stage in Alabama, man. Well, like you just said, we had one of the biggest camp ever for Alabama. So, when you're able to have a portfolio or a platform like you do when you participate in the HSA and then bring that to our camp stage, you generate true buzz for yourself that ultimately helps you out in the long run.
You're so right. And it's interesting too, because buzz can be started in the spring. It can happen in the summer, and sometimes it can happen in the fall for the very first time. And that's one of the reasons why we love this preview camp. And we saw that storyline, that idea play out all over again for the first time. And a lot of people, and talking to DC and talking to Josh, everybody wanted to know who this big guy was, Randy Olavale. He was one of our biggest, probably the biggest breakout guy of the entire camp, 6'7". Team Carroll brought him over to the camp. He was one of the last guys to get into the camp, according to DC. And he came out there and he showed out really, really well. Originally from the Dominican Republic, played in North Carolina last year, and then moved down to Alabama. He's going to be down in the Montgomery area, I believe, is where he's going to be. You can read about him more on the site. But a class of 22 player that just now is kind of getting a story starting to roll a little bit. So you're looking into the high school season for a guy that maybe is a late bloomer, a player that you can get involved with. You're a college coach and you're watching this. He's already visited Troy, if that gives you an idea of what kind of recruitment his recruitment could look like. Randy Olavale could be a guy. He's big, he's strong, a 6'7" interchangeable player that's athletic, that can play at the rim. He's really tough to deal with on the glass too as a rebounder. So there's some value there with a player like him. And that's why we take a stage so seriously. Again, MJ Jones was the guy that blew up in the spring. Randy Olavale is a guy that blew up here in September at the Alabama preview campus. So that's one of the reasons why we do this. But he was, I think, collectively, according to all of our staff there, was the number one breakout guy from the camp in Alabama. Yeah, and
it's another thing, Joe, I'll add to that too. People always ask me, off air or through Twitter DMs or even parents at camps, they say, hey, do seniors, or can you really start your story as a senior? I'm like, absolutely. Yeah. Time and time again, it happens. You play during the travel ball season, you get a little confidence. Next thing you know, you hit a camp series stop like the Bama preview, and then boom, you get even more traction behind your name because of your consistent play that you had. And clearly, like you just said, Randy is another player that took advantage of that.
You bring up a great point. I would actually argue that the majority of players that play basketball in college are players who their recruitment started their senior year. Yeah. Okay. So you have maybe 65 guys. Like, I need to look at it. Well, it's probably more than that. Like, our top 100 of our rankings, I would argue, I'm just taking a guess, 80% of them have probably been accounted for. Okay. But that's such a small number of players comparative to the game of basketball across all levels, that the majority of players that play in college, their recruitment happened in their senior year. And so it's just stay the course and be patient with it. And it's a great question to ask, because you sometimes play a game of keeping up with the Joneses.
Right.
And the Joneses sometimes live a calendar life that's much faster than yours. And that's okay, because there's so many opportunities in that high school year. And again, I think more than ever, that high school season is going to be so important for seniors, because college coaches couldn't even go out and watch them last year.
Right.
So now they're back, and now they're kind of backlogged a little bit on the recruiting calendar. That senior year playing the games, they're going to come out and see you, or again, create more film. Your senior year recruitment is going to be more than ever. Well, more than the last decade, probably. I would imagine there's probably more recruitment, actively recruited players their senior year than we've seen for quite a long time. And that's saying a lot, considering I think already most of the guys are being recruited as seniors. So you bring up a really, really good point there.
Yeah, to all the parents out there, do not press the panic button.
Don't do it.
I just mentioned, and you got plenty of time. Yeah. This is a big year. Coaches are still getting in the flow of things after coming back from not being able to see players. So you're fine. Just have your kids keep working on their games, show up to these big time events, and prove their game. That's all you got to do.
Really that's good insight there, Austin. I appreciate you bringing that up. Man, I think it's really smart.
Brother. We got to do it on the pod here, bro. We have to.
We got to do it. Got to educate a little bit here and there,
For sure. Let's keep it going. Here's a familiar name that I personally did get a chance to see a lot during the HSA as well. Ephraim Butta Johnson. Saw him play very well during our circuit stops this year. He was a continued player. I believe he played with Alabama Fusion a little bit during the season, and was a player who handled his business, came in, competed. High energy kid, a very good shooter. And he was able to kind of keep the Alabama Fusion team afloat at times. He was a person that on that roster that continued to keep them in the contention for, hey, we want to prove that we can be a better team here in the HSA. And he did that during the season. Come now, fast forward to the Bama preview, we see him as a top 5 kid at the camp. So, JY, dive into his game a little bit and what we saw from him over the weekend.
Yeah, that's really the reason they call him Butta. I mean, he's smooth, man. He's got a great jump shot, a guy that can really get buckets in a big way. You're right. We saw a lot of him. I think we saw him at Bob Gibbons is where I saw the majority of him. If I'm thinking back correctly, a lot of the events kind of blend in together, but really can blow by. His guy with the dribble. Make sure you go read about his breakdown from preview camp on the site right now. And again, make sure you follow us at HoopSeen AL. We'll have a lot of coverage on guys like Butta Johnson as well from that camp. But yeah, hard to deny a guy who backs up the billing of his nickname. And when he's so smooth with the scoring, can knock down the jump shot. I think that's a skill that transfers no matter where you're at. If you can knock down shots from the perimeter, you're going to be okay no matter what level you play at.
Yes, sir. Closing out at number 5, we've got a young fella in the top 5, a 2024 kid, Spence Sims, came in and added some weight to his story this weekend. Talk to us about Spence, JY.
Well, we had to leave a position open for the OG Garrett Tucker in the state of Alabama to give us a guy from the state of Alabama who he thought was one of the best guys there. And I think across the board, I talked to DeCourtland Christian this morning. He said there was probably no bigger eye opener from the younger players than Spence Sims, and Garrett Tucker had a lot of doing behind that opinion there. High energy guy, good shooter, plays really, really hard around the basket, can defend, emptied the tank. And really for a young guy to understand that, to coming into a camp, I think speaks volumes. Is certainly a player that we're looking at now for an invitation to our invite-only camp that we have for underclassmen coming up in October. I think Spence Sims did a really good job in Alabama, according to our staff, that warrants him an invitation for that platform coming up for really the top players, younger players, 24 and 25 guys in the Southeast.
Well, Spence, there you have it, man. Hey, you showed your value, brother. You came in, you had a great performance. Looks like we may be seeing you with that invite-only elite previews coming up soon. I love it. Listen, let me say this, JY, too. I love the elite preview. And I know it's a camp that garners a lot of attention and everybody wants to be a part of it, but there's value in seeing some of these younger future stars of tomorrow, man, because you get to see them early on. And, personal preference, when we get those pictures of these kids that, turn to be pros or play along the lines, and we have those pictures of them at our event, I think that's a pretty cool flex, man. I do.
It is cool. Like, we always used to do the picture where we'd have Ty Freeman, the OG of the photographers, and he'd go up top and he'd take the shot of everybody looking down. I love looking back at those and putting out the tweets like, can you name all the NBA players? Like we had a camp over at Norcross. I think it was like 2014, maybe it was. I think we had like a dozen guys that eventually played in the NBA in some capacity. So it's cool to see how that works out. And that was just from the state of Georgia. That wasn't just for the Southeast. Right. I mean, you're right. Like those invites to this camp it's a special fraternity to be a part of. Yeah. And, we talked about it today in one of our meetings for our management meetings, because I always want to reiterate the preview camp as a preview as to what college is going to be like competitively. It's not about the all-star games. We don't do all-star games. We've never done an all-star game. We never will do an all-star game, because I want to make sure that the camp, its premise is designed to help you compete at the collegiate level that allows you to be on the floor when you get there. Yeah. And I'm not really sure all that other stuff. It's just fluff. And we want to make sure that preview is. So guys that get the invite to that camp as an underclassman, it really sets the tone for what we believe prospects should do moving forward to become a collegiate player at any level. And it's a really special camp, and it's fun to look back and see all the players that have worn those jerseys over the years. Yeah, no doubt about it, man. Who's your favorite preview camper that you've seen over the years? I'm put you on the spot. We've had some good ones, man.
Favorite preview camper? Dang, that's a great question, JY. Oh, you got me thinking. I might have to come back to that one. That's on spot. That's a good one. Man,
there's a lot of ways to answer that, right? Because
I know
there's the best player who like broke out, there's all different caveats to that question.
Yeah, give me. I might have to answer that one on episode 23. I might have to, because I gotta really think, because I gotta go through my evaluation list. I gotta figure out, well, he was good at this camp, but then hey, he started his story a little bit early. I don't know, man. That's tricky. That's a great question, though, JY. Man, you gotta give me some time on that one. Give me some time on that one.
I thought you would have had one that you could fire it off right away.
I know I would have, man, but it's like that. Preview camps are a little bit different because there's so many players at one time.
Yeah, there are.
It's different when we talk about events and stuff. Oh, you knew who the headline guys were, but it's like there's so many guys that come in to compete. Man, that's a good question.
Jaylen Brown for me is like always like the gold standard. Just because you have the top player. I mean, at the time, like I was considering for top player in the country. And he did not take his. I mean, he was redlining his engine that event and just set the standard. I don't know if we'll ever have anybody that brings it quite like him. Davion Mitchell.
I was just about to say Davion actually.
Yeah, there's a lot. I want to hear your answer next week.
All right, I got
you. You don't have a good answer in a week's time, man. Come on.
No, I got you. I gotta, man. Listen, my selection has got to be unique. I got to make sure it's. That's precise, fair. Brother. I'm gonna have an answer for you, though. I got you.
All right, cool. Can't wait to hear it.
All right, brother. Let's keep moving forward. Now let's dive and pivot, I guess you can say, into our commitments of the week.
Yeah.
We got a lot this week, everybody.
We have a lot.
A good, strong number of commitments, guys who we think that'll really do well at the next level and make a high major impact. So let's go ahead and go right through the list. Starting off first, we'll talk about Terrence Arsenault, who's headed to Houston. I enjoyed watching Terrence this year with JL3. I'm glad they were able to make it and play on our stage. Terrence was kind of like on a team filled with stars, you can say. Terrence was kind of, in my opinion, like the glue guy. You saw him do a little bit of everything. And this Houston pickup that they get from him and his commitment, I think fits hand and glove. I love it. I love what Coach Sampson will be able to do along the lines with Terrence. And I think he'll come in and fit right away. What do you think about Terrence, JY?
I think in a week where I think this is the most important week of commitments we've had to date.
Yeah.
And so for his commitment, when it came through, I think he could be the player of the year on the American Conference, to be quite honest with you. And that's saying a lot, given that Memphis has some guys that they're going to be able to get. But like, I think Houston's run to the Final Four allows them now to get in these things and close the door on players. And here's a South Texas kid. He should be a player that's easy to go get, but his style of play fits perfectly for the way that Kelvin Sampson wants to play there at the University of Houston. Yeah. And so you get a guy like that comes in there, he can score. I think they'll develop him and cultivate him into being a high-level defender. Yeah. I think furthermore, he's going to be a guy that if you're a pro team and you're scouting college basketball, you're going to come through and watch him because he's going to have an opportunity to play from right out of the gate. I love this commitment. I'm not kidding you. I think if you're looking at a futures bet, put him down as a guy that could be player of the year in the American Conference. Significant commitment for the Cougars. And I think one of the most significant commitments of the class of 22 nationally.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I'll say this too, man. You talk about the culture, and I know I say the word culture a lot, but there's some programs who get the job done. There's some programs out there who have built a sustainable environment that produces players and allows them to have success along the lines. And if you follow Houston basketball, that Final Four run was no fluke. Coach Sampson is building something down there that is beyond incredible, and Terrence will be, I guess you could say, the next in line, and we'll see get a chance to go from high school to pros.
Well, I think that's a really good thought about having sustainable success, because we've seen teams that come into it's hard too, because if you're, and I hate to call Houston a mid-major, they're not a mid-major. They're not really like the American Conference, the way conference has been shifting. I think we need to change like the Power Five idea and throw that on its head. That being said, if you're a coach at, like, take Loyola Chicago, for example, right? So Coach Moser does such a great job there. Inevitably, he's going to level up. Now he's at Oklahoma. And so in order to have that sustained success, you got to have the coaching staff that stays there. Right. Well, I don't think Coach Sampson is going to be going anywhere anytime soon. Like, he's got a really good situation there. And so the byproduct of your success on the court, going to the Final Four, playing the postseason, taking advantage of March Madness, is that you're able to land players like Terrence Arsenault, where you're beating Texas and you're beating Kansas and you're beating some of these other programs, even within your own conference, Memphis and some of those other schools. And now you start to land those guys year in and year out. And that's how Gonzaga has been able to build up their program. That's how Wichita State, when they were on the peak of their era, were able to do those types of things. So I think when you look at high quality teams, it's really hard to sustain that over a long period of time because your coach leaves. Like, look at George Mason, right? They made this miraculous run to the Final Four. Then Jeremy Larinaga goes down to Miami. Okay. So it's a different story. And then Mason kind of, I think they're now on their fourth coach since Larinaga left. And so it's interesting now, like, how do you sustain that success? I think that's a really good thought. And really, like, guys like Terrence Arsenault to Houston allow you to continue to do that, because now who from the class of 24 or 25 commits that maybe wouldn't have committed, because they're changing the narrative of the history.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes with it, man. And I think, like you just said, I'm looking forward to following Terrence these next few years. It's always good to see guys that step foot on our HoopSeen stage, and you get a first look at,
that's cool.
Sit and see them in person. You know what I mean? Up close.
Yeah, the JL3 team, man, we saw them back in the spring. We're loaded.
Man, loaded might not even been a word. Stacked, whatever adjective you want to use.
We'll take them all. I mean, that's what they were.
Absolutely, brother. Let's keep it going. Donovan Dent is committed to the University of New Mexico. A big pickup for Coach Pitino and his staff. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Donovan Dent he's part of Corona Centennial out of Los Angeles area.
Okay.
I think they're one of the most competitive, one of the most fun, one of the most exciting teams that I've seen in the country. I think they're going to be one of the top 5 teams in the West Coast. Saw them a ton. I love what I saw from them at Section 7. I saw them a lot last year. They played a lot of showcase type of events out here in the Arizona area. And Donovan Dent consistently, now he's got some high-level players around him. He's got had Kylan Boswell, who's now here at AZ Compass Prep. He had Jared McCain, who just was out on a visit to Louisville over the weekend. And Donovan Dent was consistent every single game. Wherever you needed to play him, Donovan Dent was there. And if you look at the success that Richard Pitino's had with guards, like look at our guy from Atlanta, Nate Mason, who went to Columbia, ended up going up there to Minnesota, had a great career, was a terrific player. And of course, Richard Pitino was on staff with his dad in Louisville and was familiar with all the players that he had. You look at Russ Smith and you look at Peyton Siva, you look at all these types of guards that have had success in that Pitino style of basketball. Donovan Dent makes a ton of sense for New Mexico getting started out there. And I think he's going to have such a huge career. Again, when I look at successful commitments, it's all about the fit. Donovan Dent picked a great fit, and I think he's picking a place where he'll play right away. Significant commitment. Again, when we do our signing day stuff, I want to find like the 5 most important commitments when it comes to fit. Donovan Dent may fall in that category.
Wow, that's big time right there. So Donovan, we'll keep an eye on you, brother. Congrats on your commitment to University of New Mexico. Moving down the line, let's talk about Aiden Mahaney going to St. Mary.
Yeah.
Man, talk about Aiden, JY.
Okay, so I've seen there's a club program called Team GRR, GRRR. Okay, and I've seen them a ton over the last 12 months. I first saw them up in Utah. My friend Tim Davis, who runs the Great Western Classic, I'll be up there in a couple of weeks. He said, "Hey, you're gonna want to watch this team. They've got this kid, Aiden Mahaney, and then Randy Bennett. His son also plays on that team.
Wow!
And so Randy Bennett can go out and watch his own son play. Like that's obviously allowed in the rules. And every time I'd see Team GRR, and they played there. They played at the Border League, and then Team GRR would play a lot of just showcase events just out in the West. And Aiden Mahaney was in the middle of everything, just absolutely slaying the Dragons. And Randy Bennett, because his son was on the team, was at every single one of their games. And the running joke amongst those in the West is, when is Aiden Mahaney just going to go ahead and commit to St. Mary's? Well, he finally committed to St. Mary's, and what they're getting is a guy that could start for about any team in the Pac-12 at the point guard spot. High-level guy, and there's a reason why the West Coast Conference, year in and year out, is one of the best basketball conferences in the country. And there's a reason why St. Mary's is a 20-plus win team every single year. It's because they get a player like Aiden Mahaney to come over and run the show. They do a great job of international recruiting, particularly down in Australia and New Zealand. Here you got a kid that's a hometown kid that's right there in your backyard that's going to go to St. Mary's, and he's going to be an absolute dragon slayer in his career. I love this commitment. I think he's an all-conference level player, and I think he could contend even with Gonzaga in that league. Could be a team or could be a player that contends for player of the year in the West Coast Conference. Tremendous commitment for the Gales. I love this commitment upside down and backwards.
Good deal, man. Congrats to you, Aiden. Best of luck in the near future. Up next, we've got Justin Fernandez headed to George Mason. Talk to us about Justin.
Okay, so we talked about Mason earlier, right? About how when Larinaga, they went to the Final Four, got the job at Miami. I think Justin Fernandez is probably the most important commitment that George Mason's landed since then. A significant commitment. He's visited Virginia Tech. He was down in Miami. There's a lot of ACC schools. But Kim English is going to be an absolute superstar when it comes to recruiting players and coaching players, one of the best young coaches there is in college basketball. He proved that with this monster recruiting win, a guy in Justin Fernandez, a local prospect, a guy that I saw at the All-American camp, the Pangos All-American camp, was really, really intrigued by him. High-level academic student, high character kid, big guard, 6'4", can be interchangeable 1, 2, and 3. Man, I love this commitment. And I love this for George Mason. I think he can come in there and play right away. But again, sustainable success, I think that's how you grow with a good young coach in Kim English. And you have to land a ringer. And they did that in Justin Fernandez. Significant commitment.
Yeah, special shout out to man, our guy Kim English, man. I think, like you said, JY, I think he's going to do a fantastic job there, George Mason, and building that culture, man. And those guys that play for him will be extremely lucky to do so, man. So best of luck to you, Justin, up at George Mason. Okay, here we go. One of my favorites, man, Big Vince. Vincent Wachukwu going to USC. Talk to us about Big Vince, JY.
Well, I knew he was going to go to California. I knew he wanted to go to a big stage. I thought LA was going to be a city that he would look at. I thought potentially he would be playing for G League Ignite, to be quite honest with you. I thought he was a guy that was going to go do that. we've seen, it's interesting. This is the Evan Mobley ripple effect now, right?
Yeah.
And so Big Vince falls in that category where he's a rim runner. We've seen him be able to step out and shoot. I don't think that's his strength, but the Pac-12 is landing some really high-level guys. I actually love what the Pac-12 is doing for this class. We've seen Oregon get big Khalil Ware. We're seeing a lot of the other schools. UCLA is going to be involved with a lot of guys. But Big Vince going to USC, I think, is a really significant one. Moreover, in the fact that we're seeing guys – I put this out on Twitter. I think it was misunderstood, as I think we're going to see we're not going to see 30 guys, okay? They're going to be playing for overtime. Okay, G League's going to come in and snatch up a half dozen guys that are really good. That takes a significant chunk out of the bottom line for the players that are going to college. And Big Vince is a guy that's a pro prospect that legitimately pro teams have their eyes on, okay? Now, there may be some players ranked ahead of him that maybe aren't being looked at quite as much, because I think the beauty of Vince is that you have a high and low element to him. And when his highs are high, they're very, very high. When his lows are there, you become a little disappointed, only because you know how high the highs can be.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
But he's a really good shot blocker. He's a unique size guy, runs the floor like a guard. And I do think that his development over the next couple of years is really important. I think there needs to be something to be said, too, about the development that Andy Enfield and his staff does at USC. They've done a really good job of cultivating pro players there. Of course, Andy's got some experience at the NBA, even has a lot of experience going back to a program that we've talked about a lot on this show, and that's Florida State. He was one of Leonard Hamilton's assistants before he got the Florida Gulf Coast job, and, of course, now in LA at USC. So I love this commitment for the Trojans. I think that the upside is significant, and I do think he's one of the few guys that's a legit pro prospect coming out of high school into the collegiate level that's actually going to play at the collegiate level and also get better there. But yeah, really, obviously it's a huge commitment for them.
All right. Good luck at USC, Big Vince. I'm glad we got his name right too, man. That's a running.
Big Vince, you can't go wrong by just saying Big Vince.
You can't. I think he is cool with that too. Okay, here's another one for you, and this one probably got a lot of headway as well, man. Let's talk about Jackson Kohler heading to Michigan State.
Wow.
How do you feel about Jackson going to Michigan State?
Well, when we reported his decision to take an official visit there on social media, I guess probably 3 weeks ago now, it was. Dad, he reached out to me and said, hey, we're going to East Lansing. We're going to go take a visit. In my head, I didn't want to say it because I wanted to remain unbiased. I'm like, that's it. That's where he's going to go. What a perfect place for him to go. Like, we've seen Tom Izzo and his staff over the years cultivate and develop really, really good post players in the Big Ten. Jackson Kohler undoubtedly is one of the best big men there are in the country, a tremendous passer, a tremendous low post guy, an old school guy that when he goes on that Big Ten barnstorming tour, I think everybody that opposing team is going to have a hard time disliking Jackson Kohler because of the way that he plays. A lot of the old school basketball guys are going to love the way that he plays. So his commitment to Michigan State, to me, just makes so much sense, the way that they play. I love it for him. I love it for Tom Izzo and his staff. I think it makes a ton of sense, and really a guy that I think could be a first-team All-Big Ten guy, an impact guy there in East Lansing. And I think he actually plays a lot right away because his skill set is so high.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that, man. We've ripped and raved about Jackson over the past few weeks in his game, and so it speaks for itself.
Wasn't he our visitor of the week? He was our visitor of the week, wasn't he?
Visitor of the week, player of the podcast one time at a camp. Like, it was so, we talked so much about Jackson, man.
Yeah, we have. Oh, it was when he went to Iowa. That's what it was.
Iowa. Iowa. But again, like you said, Tom Izzo's produced post players in the past, so this is nothing new, and it'll be another great fit. And I'm interested to see how he does in Big Ten competition as well. That's going to be a thing to keep an eye on.
You know what? I'm not saying that his game is like Draymond Green, but his passing and his value is really, really interesting. I'd be interested to see if they cut up some video with some Draymond stuff at the collegiate level. I'm sure they did already.
Yeah, and another thing too is you got to think about when players go to college, how their game may change a little bit. You may see him, doing some things out along to help compensate, not compensate, but to help aid with the passing. You can pass like that in the post. You start getting a little bit, maybe you get a little bit more perimeter game. Maybe work on those things. So it'd be interesting to see for Jackson nonetheless. All right, last one for commitments of the week. Denzel Aberdeen headed to Florida. A big commitment from Mike White and his staff. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so his recruitment went all over the place, right? Oklahoma was involved. Georgia Tech was involved. But you always got to keep a watch of the Florida Gators, particularly with the Florida player. An Orlando kid at Dr. Phillips, so it's right up the road, not too far away up there in Gainesville. Denzel Aberdeen, I think when we look at senior season risers going into this travel season, rather, we saw his game get so much better from the start of the year, even from Bob Gibbons in May to where it ended in July, where we saw him a lot, or in August, I guess it was 1st of August, big gaps well, not big gap, but a big leap of improvement in his game. Really important score, I think, for Mike White, a high character kid, a local kid that they fought off some national schools to get involved and to get that job done. But yeah, it didn't surprise me. Anytime an in-state guy goes and has a recruitment, he can see other places across the country, but the hometown school comes a knocking. It never shocks me when they land the commitment. So big time commitment, obviously, for Denzel Aberdeen. Man, I love that commitment for them, big time. But and also, I think it makes us keep our eyes on big Ernest Uday, who's also there at Dr. Phillips, and our guy Riley Kugel, who's also there at Dr. Phillips. So they're up next on the calendar. So I'm interested to see if Florida, if they try to keep those Hopetown guys, their high school teammates, all together and keep them all coming for the Gators too. Keep your eye on that.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I have my eye on that for sure, because you never, not to say it gets tricky, but it's interesting, man. When guys from the same teams and you got a big program like Florida, I'm very interested to see what kind of plays they make within the next coming months for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All
right, last segment of the day. Let's talk about visitor of the weekend, ladies and gentlemen. And here's today's visitor of the weekend. It's Odum Bona, who will be visiting Baylor. And we've been talking about Baylor a lot over the past few weeks. Obviously, when you're a national championship team, you'll be able to get some key guys that come on the campus and you'll be able to recruit. Talk to us about the impact possibly for Odum to be able to go to Baylor. What does that mean for them and their program having him there?
Well, they've done a great job recruiting internationally, number one, and they've done a really good job with big men, number two. He fits the mold, the prolific prep big guy. From Turkey, has gone, is at prolific prep and visited Kentucky last weekend. I think it's, he's going to be our number one big guy, I think, on the road this weekend. As of now, we record this segment the first part of the week, and we're always planning for the end of the week. So a lot of things can change between now and then. But yeah, I mean, arguably one of the most impactful defensive players there are in the country, down the low post. If you look at Baylor's success over the years, they've always had an absolute dog in the middle, a guy that plays with high energy. That's the way they play. Odum Bona is probably the best motor man there is at his position across the board. And so it's not a surprise that Baylor targeted him early, and not a surprise they're getting him to go down there to Waco to take a visit on the heels of taking a trip to Kentucky. So they're playing a little power move. You know what? We're the national champs. Okay, we got the ring. So come down and see us after you go see the Blue Blood and tell us what you think. So I kind of love that chess match that recruiting plays. Sometimes it's a matter of logistics. Sometimes it's a matter of strategy. I think it might be a little bit of both with this visit. But certainly, as of right now, the first part of the week, Odum Bona, who's visiting September 24th, is my visitor of the weekend to the Baylor Bears. And we'll certainly keep our eyes on that one for the big fella from Prolific Prep.
Yeah, you can't go wrong taking a visit to Baylor. I mean, it'll be a chess match, but he's definitely going to have a great time down there experiencing that Baylor University culture.
No question.
Okay, JWad, that wraps it up for today, man. Real quick, I want to throw two things out there. Everyone, make sure you can visit hoopseen.com/rankings to check out all of our rankings online. Also, I've been getting a bunch of texts and DMs about preview camp updates. Hey, all the preview camps are listed. We've got a bunch of different states. Go to hoopseen.com/events. You'll see the preview camps and their recording states. Make sure y'all go ahead and register too. People have also asked, hey, when is the deadline? The deadline is you need to sign up as soon as possible so you don't get out. Yeah. So that's the deadline for that. So those two things from me. JY, anything from you, man, to close off this episode?
Yeah, our South Carolina camp is this weekend. If you want to get in that camp, we have a little bit longer of a runway for that one, so you can register probably up to the day of the camp. I would suggest that you don't. But we definitely want to get you there at our South Carolina camp. We're going to play at the gorgeous Upward Stars Center there in Spartanburg. So make sure you get involved and be a part of that one. I think if you want to blow up, that's probably our best camp for you to go do that, because I think so, it's going to be a bit of a smaller camp. It's an opportunity, a chance for you to take a bigger opportunity and really blow that up even more. So if you want to be a part of our camp, you don't have to be from South Carolina either. You can be from wherever, but if you want to be a part of something that you can kind of blow up at, that's probably the best opportunity for you to go do that. Also, our Kentucky camp, make sure you look at hoopseen.com/events. Like you mentioned, Austin, our Kentucky camp is our first time we've ever gone to the state of Kentucky for a preview camp. Make sure you want to get a part of that. If you're from Indiana, if you're from Ohio, if you're from somewhere in that area that north of Louisville, you're going to want to get yourself involved in this camp as well. It's an opportunity for us to help you and maybe expose you to some different schools that maybe aren't being recruited by right now down the South. So be a part of those two camps. If you want to be a guy that blows up, those are two great stages to go do that.
Yeah, and two things you mentioned, JY. The first thing I think I really heard you say that I love about, hey, if you're not from that correspondent state, you still can go to that camp, get there.
That goes for all of our camps.
Yeah. It does. And the second thing as well is you mentioned about having an opportunity to be exposed to different schools in different areas. Hey, that's a big thing. I've seen players go to play at different events. We go through our HoopSeen circuit, or even just be at different camps. You get the opportunity to be seen by schools not in your quote unquote geographical region. Yeah. And that opens up your recruitment. It helps a lot. So that's a big thing.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in to episode number 22 of the Just a Minute podcast. Hey, I'm Austin Smith, your HoopSeen host. My brother, my partner in crime is Justin Young, who is our editor-in-chief. As always, man, you all go and head on over to hoopseen.com to check out everything for the latest and greatest from hoopseen.com. Get registered for those events. Always stay tuned to us on @HoopSeen on Twitter. You never know what will be posted on our HoopSeen timeline, and you do not want to miss a beat. JY, appreciate the time, brother. And to everyone tuning in, thanks for tuning in to episode number 22. We look forward to seeing you guys next week.